Russia just threatened the start of World War III. Joe Biden has given Ukraine the permission to use ATACMS, a highly explosive long-range missile for strike deep inside of Russia.
The US President Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use American long-range missiles to strike targets deep inside Russia.
Until now, Mr. Biden has been reluctant to give permission because of concerns about the conflict escalating.
However, that line has now been erased, driven by mounting threats and a ticking political clock. How will this authorization affect the war in Ukraine? And will Trump reverse Biden's decision when he is elected? The war in Ukraine has taken a dramatic turn, with President Joe Biden authorizing Ukraine's use of the Army Tactical Missile System, ATACMS, to strike Russia. But before getting to the capabilities of this missile system, it's important to know why Joe Biden finally granted the authorization. The Biden administration has been concerned about the thousands of North Korean troops sent to Russia to back up Moscow's war effort in Ukraine.
While the White House is also yet to officially confirm the details, the weapons may be used quickly and in response to the deployment of thousands of North Korean troops to Russia's Kursk region.
And even worse, the troops have already begun a formal attack on the Ukrainians. The Biden administration sees this as a dangerous escalation and are concerned that Pyongyang could send more reinforcements to Moscow. The authorization to strike Russia is partly intended to deter further North Korean involvement and to make clear that such actions come at a cost. Another major reason why Biden authorized the strike is due to the results of the November 5th elections. With just 2 months left before President-elect Donald Trump assumes office, Biden is determined to solidify U.S. support for Ukraine.
First of all, the political strategic, that Biden, of course, has weeks left, and this will, in some ways, I suppose, leave the contribution of Biden to the war on a relative high. But
Trump has already made clear his intentions to end the war, but has offered no specifics on how he plans to achieve this. Many in Kyiv and Washington worry that a Trump administration might scale back military aid to Ukraine. By allowing Ukraine to use ATACMS now, Biden aims to strengthen Ukraine's negotiating position for any future peace talks. Ukraine's leader, Volodymyr Zelensky, has long argued that restrictions on using U.S. weapons inside Russia left them fighting with one hand tied behind their back. With this authorization, Zelensky has the opportunity to strike Russia and gain the upper hand in the war. And according to the New York Times, the ATACMS will likely initially be used by the Ukrainians in their military operations in the Kursk region. But just how effective are these missiles? The ATACMS is more than just another weapon. It is a supersonic tactical ballistic missile with a range of up to 300 kilometers, or 186 miles.
ATACMS can strike as far as 300 kilometers into Russia. That puts important targets into range, including the annexed peninsula of Crimea, which Ukraine considers its own territory, and the Kerch Bridge, which connects Crimea to the Russian mainland.
Fired from platforms like the M270 multiple launch rocket system or the M142 high mobility artillery rocket system, this warhead carries about 170 kilograms of explosives, and each missile costs around $1.5 million. And it gets even better. The warhead comes in options. The first is the cluster, containing hundreds of bomblets designed to destroy lightly armored units, troops, and parked aircraft over a wide area. Then there's the single 225-kilogram warhead, capable of destroying hardened structures, such as military bunkers or key infrastructures. The ATACMS has a long history. First used during the Gulf War in 1991, ATACMS has proven its effectiveness over decades of military engagements. According to the Pentagon, as of September, Russia had already transferred 90% of its military aircrafts out of reach of ATACMS.
However, Russia has also moved many of its valuable combat aircraft and bombers out of the 300-kilometer ATACMS range, including the planes that launch glide bomb attacks that have devastated Ukrainian cities this past year.
The fear is real. and Russia has been doing everything it can to limit the damages these missiles will cause. While the decision to provide Ukraine with ATACMS has been hailed as a bold move, the potential consequences cannot be ignored. On one hand, Ukrainian forces are no longer restricted from attacking Russia with its full force. However, on the other hand, there's a massive risk of a full-out escalation. Some analysts say this could be the start of another world war. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned that using Western weapons to strike Russian territory would be considered NATO's direct participation in the conflict. While previous red lines, such as providing tanks and fighter jets to Ukraine, have been crossed without triggering war with NATO, Russia just vowed a serious response if US missiles strike its territory.
There has been more reaction from Moscow over U.S. President Biden's decision to allow Ukraine to hit targets deep inside Russia. The foreign ministry in Moscow says Ukraine using long-range missiles would mark a radical escalation of the conflict, a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO.
Another problem that could occur is the supply of the missiles. According to Kirill Mikhailov, a military analyst, Kyiv has a limited stock of these missiles. This limited supply may restrict Ukraine's ability to sustain long-range campaigns. In the meantime, Ukraine has a much more pressing issue: Donald Trump revoking the authorization. With only 2 months before his return to the White House, Ukraine is heavily concerned about how Trump will react to the authorization. Trump is not a big fan of Zelensky. On multiple occasions, he has condemned the foreign aid, and during his campaign, he called the Ukrainian president the biggest salesman ever.
I think Zelensky is maybe the greatest salesman of any politician that's ever lived. Every time he comes to our country, he walks away with $60 billion.
Vice President-elect J.D. Vance and others also argued against continued U.S. military aid, citing concerns about escalating costs and risks. Trump vowed to end the war in 24 hours, and while that sounds good, during his campaigns, he stated that he might give up some of Ukraine's land to Russia to achieve peace. This has added to Ukraine's concerns, and now under his incoming administration, there is fear that Trump may prioritize cutting costs over supporting Ukraine. Oleksiy Goncharenko, a Ukrainian MP, expressed concern that Trump could revoke ATACMS authorization. Trump's son, Donald Trump Jr., recently accused the military-industrial complex of pushing the U.S. towards World War III, further adding to Ukraine's growing concern. While Ukraine is planning to strike Russia with the full force of the ATACMS for the next 2 months, Russia, on the other hand, has implemented a psychological tactic on Ukraine. So check this deep dive where I'll show you how Russian dummy drones hit Ukraine.